Just to begin with, I can say that I visited the projects in which Casper and Festo is working in Kenya, in Nairobi, and also in Mombasa. Afterwards, we went to Tanzania, to Dar es Salaam, and visited some youth groups working there. In Mombasa, it was trade unions, and I think in Nairobi, it was some youth groups working with small and medium-sized activities in a slum area. It was quite a beautiful experience because these people living in the midst of sewers and everything, they had really the energy to get on with their life and try to get some better circumstances for themselves and their family. So it was really a nice experience. I think it's from some 5 or 4 years ago. So, but I hope to have the possibility to be coming by again sometime to visit you again. So I think we should start, and I'll just start here by. Oh, I just have to have my paper here. So, welcome to all of you to this series of webinars, which is hosted by the consultant network, The Wilderness. Welcome to all of you in this virtual space. And of course, especially welcome to our presenter today, Casper Pedo from Nairobi, Kenya, who's going to talk about international development, especially trade unions and youth organizations. Civil society challenges in the time of the corona pandemic. You will have the possibility for introducing yourself in a moment, Casper, but I would like also to welcome our panelist, Annette Larsen from Danish Trade Union Development Agency, where she is a program consultant and she has extensive knowledge and experiences with working with partners in Kenya and Tanzania. So the overall purpose with these webinars, it is that we want to gather experiences and suggestions on how the international development aid can be used effectively for the benefit of the poorest groups, both during the crisis and subsequently. We want to put words and faces on the grief and pain, but also the joy and strength that is demonstrated during the corona tragedy. We'll get status and reports from different countries, from Vietnam, from Kenya right now, from Bolivia, from Ecuador, from Honduras, and from United States, New Mexico. And the third one, we want to explore the possibilities that webinar offers for strengthening networks, communication, and information flow across continents. And at the same time, to explore the possibilities to let this mutual exchange use a wider variety of cultural expressions, not only words, but also with poems, pictures, videos, etc. So you can find more information about our seminars. It is now, of course, on our website, but it is now also on the largest Danish news platform, Global, where you can also see this webinars and the purpose and also how to register. Just a few practical things before we start. During the presentation, there will be the possibility to ask clarifying questions. Questions to the content and comments will be after the presentation. Casper will have about 25 minutes to the presentation, and then we will open the floor. And of course, first to Annette to ask questions. I will also have some, but then we will invite you to ask questions also. You have a possibility on your screen to raise your hand so that we can see who wants to take the word. But you also have the possibility to write in the chat with us and to write to us if there's something in the technique that is not functioning, or if there is some questions that you would like to ask afterwards. And this is, of course, important for those of you who don't have a picture where we can't see if you raise your hand on the screen. That's also a possibility. So I think with these words, I would like to give the word to Casper Pedo from Nairobi, Kenya, and to talk about his experiences in Kenya, and I think also in Tanzania, regarding this crisis of the corona pandemic and civil society. So the word is yours, Casper.
Thank you, Johannes, for having me, and for all the panelists, and of course my colleague Festus. I understand Carsten is there. I don't know whether Jeppe, my colleague as well, is there, or that's a different Jeppe. I'm looking forward to this. I think, as you've already mentioned, my name is Casper, and I'm a regional program manager and of FIC, and we are implementing our programs throughout the region. I think it's okay to share the screen if it's okay.
Mm-hmm. We'll share the screen, yes, and we'll do it this way that I will be in control of the PowerPoint, and then Casper, he will say to me when we should shift the slide. So I think you can see the screen now.
Sure.
Very fine.
Thank you. Very good. So I mean, I'm done with the introduction. I think you could actually scroll down to the next slide, which is also part of the introduction.
Yes. Just a moment. Yes. Let's share the screen here. So we have it here. Yes, so we have this slide here.
Yes, thank you. I think I might be comfortable. Well, so this is, well, we are SFIC Forum for International Cooperation. It's is an organization with that is within, has a presence in East Africa. Right now, we are in 4 countries. And the program that we're currently implementing is called Decent Work and Labor Rights. And Johannes, I think I'll try to move on with so you might just want to catch up with what I'm doing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Now, so this is a great opportunity to also talk a little, quite a bit about the situation, the pandemic of COVID-19, and how we are handling it in East Africa, especially with regard to our program. Of course, it has come with its own challenges, but it also has come with what I would actually look at as opportunities. And of course, the new ways of doing things that perhaps can take us into the future much better prepared than we are currently. Now, as a general overview, that is slide 3 is we should actually say, compared to Africa, and in East particular, we haven't actually seen the worst of its impact in terms of the health factor. The fatality has not been completely as serious as we have actually seen it in other parts of the world. So that we've actually been spared. And of course, I think our governments, most of our governments are trying their best to ensure that the monitoring actually takes place. So, and that they record the number of that turned out to be positive in the testing. So at this point, we're still looking at the rate of 5% of infection among those that actually get to be tested. Nevertheless, the economy has actually taken a big beating into it. And certainly there is a huge loss of jobs, and hundreds of thousands have actually lost their jobs. And at the beginning, on May 1st, our President Kenyatta, predicted that we are going to have over 500,000 loss of jobs. Now, already at this point, I think the statistics are actually showing that the number could actually be much bigger. Now, the worst part of it, obviously, is that as we move forward with all our African countries and East African countries in particular, trying to focus a lot on the Sustainable Development Goals, the biggest, the most obvious thing is that the pandemic is actually going to, there's quite some noise on the other side, has put quite an amount of setback in the gains that we have had, and I believe a lot more to do with poverty situation, with the hundreds of thousands of job losses and a lot of people getting back into the villages to start off their life. We are yet to see the worst part, or the worst impact that this has actually created. Now, a quick one on what FIC does is we are an organization with a head office in Copenhagen, Denmark, and then the regional office in East Africa, based in Nairobi. FIC, in short, has actually been having its presence here for the last 15 years. And the work has been very much focused on the promotion of decent employment opportunities for the youth, especially those that are joining the labor market. And of course, also focusing on workers, especially the low-skilled workforce, those that are largely working in the labor-intensive sectors. And again, the most important thing, why FIC has largely paid attention to this is because economically, these are they make part of the most vulnerable social groups. The youth joining the labor market, obviously, those particularly that do not have a high level of skills and high level of education, normally end up in the lower section of the pyramid in terms of unemployment. And so they end up jostling for, very small, opportunities that are available. And there's quite a huge percentage of them that end up not having proper decent jobs. And then, of course, we also have a lot of them also flow into the areas that require high labor intensive and intensity. And a lot of times they do not have the capacity to be able to bargain for decent employment. So that is why FIC, in short, has actually focused its attention in this. Our thematic focus, again, is on Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. You could actually see it on the screen. While that is our focus, as I mentioned, most important attention we are paying to the social inclusion of the most vulnerable. And for us, at this point, the most vulnerable are the youth joining the labor market, and also, of course, those that are already at work, but are mostly the labor-intensive sectors. Now, most important aspect of this is that
Should I take the next slide?
Sorry?
Should I take
the
sure. Next slide? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you there already?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Now, the approach that FIC uses is quite a unique but very, very important. And that is that we put our focus on helping the vulnerable social groups have their own power and ability to determine their future and be able to bargain their way into making things better for themselves. So we would like to, most of the time we work towards empowering those vulnerable groups to be able to take control of their own lives. And so we do not just train and get out there and say, fine, we get into intervention ourselves, but our role is actually to ensure that the social groups that we're working with are able to take over their own responsibilities. And so for the youth, particularly, we are working with civil society organizations, much more focusing on youth issues. And part of what we do is we build their capacity as youth organizations, because they're actually representing the youth. They're actually member-based organizations, and they represent the youth in promoting the employment opportunities. So that is one of the very key aspects that we look at. The other thing, obviously, is that our primary target group are mostly young people that do not have a lot of skills to be able to get into decent employment. So then part of our focus is on supporting the skills for soft skills and life skills for employability, but also training them on entrepreneurship. In that case, then they are actually able to interact more with the labor market and be able to actually present themselves well and be able to actually sustain themselves in the environment. The other focus is working with the trade unions. And it's important to also pay attention that the trade unions are actually member-based, or actually they actually represent workers. And our strategy is largely to be able to get the voices of the workers to be felt in a collective manner. In other words, they are the ones collectively that should be able to bargain for their better terms and conditions of employment. And so strengthening the capacity of the trade unions is one very key area that we focus on. But at the same time, we also get into the sensitization of workers of their rights, so that when they are actually completely aware of their rights, then they're able to take over and responsibilities for bargaining their way into better working conditions. Now, something common down there is we work again to try to promote the social space, or the space for dialogue among the key stakeholders. This is both for youth partners, but also for the trade unions. Some of the things that we actually realized over the years is the inability of the different key stakeholders and players in the market to be able to interact and work towards common solutions in the labor market challenges. Could you move to the next slide?
Yes.
Please, thank you.
Yes.
Over the 15 years, this is again very approximate the number of youth and workers that we have reached. We have an estimation of up to about 50,000 young people whom we have largely focused on in Kenya and Tanzania, and up to about 50,000 that have actually interacted in our program, the majority of whom have managed to start up businesses and even improve on them. A lot of them also have actually managed to secure employment, and I want to emphasize the word decent employment. And so, I mean, of course, we also have ways by which we try to monitor and see, because some, interventions can come in within a period of 1 or 2 months. Securing employment can take a little longer, so we also try to use different means to be able to track those that have actually passed through our program. Within the same time, we have actually managed to work with up to close to 30,000 workers represented by up to 8 different trade unions in Kenya and Tanzania. And now we've actually moved on to work in Rwanda and Uganda. So this is basically, this number have actually benefited through improved collective bargaining process, the strengthened trade unions that are able to now understand the workers' rights and be able to actually represent them effectively, but at the same time engage with other social partners to ensure that these kind of situations are more sustainable. Could you move to the next slide, please? Well, so now getting to the real point here is that the pandemic has actually created a situation that we never anticipated, nobody actually ever did. And by the way, one of the biggest challenges we've had is the loss of jobs. I was actually reading today already that one of our famous hotels called the Norfolk Hotel, I think it's one of the oldest, very famous, has actually closed its door, its business, and with hundreds of workers who are actually there. It is estimated that particularly in the hospitality sector, we might end up losing up to 300,000 workers. Could you move on to the next one? And of course, before we get into this, is that losing job is one thing, but again, we are talking about particularly workers that already in their workplaces have not been experiencing decent employment. They've actually been having really poor working conditions, poor remuneration and all that. And we as FIC and with our trade union partners particularly have not completely succeeded in securing decent employment for all. And of course, there are also challenges that have actually come in during this period, precarious employment, which basically has brought a lot of issues related to security at workplace. A lot of workers actually end up moving from one place to another without really, in fact, there's quite a lot of human rights and workers' rights violation because most of these workers now are actually ending up, being managed by what we call labor agents, outsourcing companies and things like that. So this is one major challenge that we're actually experiencing now. So now, added to this fact that businesses are closing down, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of workers that are going back home without any proper send-off. So in other words, they're going to start from a level zero. So you can imagine over 300,000-400,000 workers, or perhaps more, that will go back to what they never had. And they have children, they have families to take care of. So even the basic needs will actually have to be a big problem to meet. We understand, obviously, that also East Africa is of close to 70% run by informal process of business. This also adds to the injury that even those businesses, quite a number of them are not really doing that well because the purchasing power is also gone down. So not everybody is able to meet their basic needs. In other words, what I started by saying is that the poverty level is scary and it might actually go up. Now, if you look at the screen, you'll actually see that in this table that the warehouses and freights, these are businesses that mostly start from the coast. This was actually a very, this was the earlier number that I had gotten. I think right now the number of workers that actually lost jobs gone up. 800 is a very, very low. I mean, the business at the port's gone down. Freight by, cargo planes have also reduced their businesses up to 30%. I read about that. It's about over 30% of the business have actually closed down. Now, in the hospitality sector, which is hotels, restaurants, and tourism in general, we are talking about right now over 143 hotels that have actually closed down. We know that on average, a hotel would be having fairly around 50 to 100 or even to 130 workers. 57 restaurants we're talking about, so that is a big number of workforce that have actually been laid off. And of course, in general, we are talking about over 300,000. That the figure, sorry, is not well represented there, but that's 300,000 workers who have lost their jobs. In the horticulture sector, the last couple of weeks, the number came to about 50,000. Okay, there is hope that the farms are reopening. Some of the workers are actually getting back, but we also have, as I mentioned, there are situations that started from a couple of years ago where the cost of doing business went up. Already, like last year, we had about 14,000. To the end of 2019, we had about 14,000 workers that actually lost their jobs because our business had closed down. Now, added to this particular pandemic, as much as we're saying there would be other business, farms reopening, I think the number of the workers that will have actually lost their jobs will go past 50,000. Similarly, in Tanzania, we have currently about 500 workers who have actually lost their jobs, who have been actually sent home indefinitely. In the construction sector, again, this one, I took the figures from Dar es Salaam, and we are talking about 800. Now, the most important thing that you also need to consider here, apart from these statistics, is the fact that a good number of these workers were under the CBAs by the trade unions that you're working with. In other words, the CBAs will not mean anything to them, and the CBAs mostly did not take care of eventualities such as COVID-19. Now, you talk about 50,000 workers. We are currently working with Kenya Plantation Workers Union. So we're talking about over 50,000. Looking at the hotel industry, we are working with the trade union in the hotel industry and looking at the construction sector in Dar es Salaam. So we are talking about also a huge loss to the trade unions in terms of revenue. And so, again, they have to actually get back into seeing how they can actually start again what we call organizing and recruitment afresh. Can we move on? Is Johannes there? Okay, so the other challenge that we actually experienced is restricted intervention and lack of dialogue. Despite the job loss, the trade unions have not been able to enter into a meaningful dialogue as issues of workers have not been given much of a center stage. The reason being that the government right now is talking much more about health concerns. There is no time to sit down with the trade unions or with employers and discuss issues of economics and economies. So that is a big challenge. I think there where central organization of trade unions are in conversation with the government, but there's no particular positive outcome out of those conversations. The Tanzania is the same thing. We haven't actually gotten any tangible results out of that. The other thing is that the trade union partners have been too overwhelmed to act to protect the workers from dismissal. And again, so much related to this is that it has not been very easy to go to the workplaces, discuss issues with the employers, because the employers are also quite desperate to salvage what they've got. All this has actually created some serious mess in terms of social dialogue, in terms of the work of the trade unions, in terms of protecting the workers. We also know very well that as much as we do not have right now the statistics, I know, for example, that the projection in terms of economic growth for Kenya was about 5.7% for this year. Tanzania was about the same. For Kenya, I know it has actually been revised to about 1%. In other words, the youth that is joining the labor market, you expect that they will even be much more struggling to access any employment. Now, I think I'm about to conclude. So what is our way, how are we actually doing this as FIC and the trade union partners and the youth civil society organizations? As I mentioned, some of the things that have actually come out of this is that they've actually taught us some level of innovation. And one of the things that we have identified is leveraging technology to promote our interventions on decent work. So for instance, among the youth, in the youth program, we have seen that the physical presence has not been that possible. So we've actually gotten into using different means, for example, the social media, the YouTube. We also trying to see how to promote, basically Facebook and all manner of technology to be able to ensure that we still continue training the young people joining the labor market. We also see ourselves spending a lot more time giving information, online information on these essential opportunities that are available. As a matter of fact, and I think Festus might eventually, when I finish, be able to make some additions, is we've found this to be, that we are actually able to reach more young people virtually and through this technology than we were able to reach when we were actually meeting them physically. So we see this as a great chance to expand our work and reach more youth. Now, among the trade unions, it's not equal. I mean, it's not as easy. A lot of workers that we are targeting are not necessarily workers that would be able to use smartphones and all that. Well, I know that our trade union partners have been actually trying to reach their members through the use of WhatsApp, maybe Facebook, but a lot of times using WhatsApp and using telephones to be able to reach their people. One of the initiatives that we are working currently on taking is quite underway is the use of the FM radio stations and televisions. And these are basically to interact with the workers and the general public on issues of human rights and workers' rights. The platform is very good because, we are trying to see how more people can participate in that, can express themselves, can also get answers that they may not actually be able to get, especially with this time of lockdown. The other thing is that among the youth, there is what we call new interventions, innovations. We have seen youth helping their own members take up different opportunities. Like right now, for example, the use of the mask or face mask. We have a lot of young people that have actually embarked on designing this and setting up. So that's a new opportunity. We also have seen situations where we have actually basically try to work with the youth to be able to support them to, for example, instead of going, waiting for the customers to come to the business centers, that those that, for example, are doing things like salon would actually use their network to go and do the services at the homesteads. You can say it can also be a bit risky and dangerous, but I think if all the necessary measures are taken into place, then the most important thing that will actually happen is that the youth will still be able to continue running their business in one way or another. Improving quality of collective bargaining. This is an area much more to do with the trade unions, and we feel that some of the things that we never got to train the trade union leaders on is how to make the CBAs more with quality to be able to take care of some of these eventualities. We are looking at situations where workers might even be able to have some amount saved within the companies in case of such kind of eventualities, and that such kind of funds would be able to sustain workers, even those that will have actually been working on half pay, that there can be some level of cushioning them. So as we are embarking into continue working with the trade unions in terms of capacity building, we are going to try to emphasize a lot more on improving the quality of the CBAs in line with eventualities and the unforeseen circumstances like what COVID-19 has actually brought us into. We also hope that with the youth, that will actually also continue promoting or dialogue, especially looking at how the economy can recover and pay a lot more attention and priority to the youth and employment issues. Now, I'm done. In case there are questions or clarification, I'm ready.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for a very interesting presentation. Just gonna stop share here, and I think firstly I will give the word to Annette to hear if you have some questions now. I'll just open your microphone is on. So question and comments from you.
Yeah, thank you, Johannes, and thank you, Casper, for a very interesting presentation on a situation which is very scary. And I especially think it's interesting to hear, or it's scary to hear about the massive job loss which is going to happen all over the world, and also the influencing on the working conditions and the decent work. You are working in sectors which is already having a lot of challenges, and with the tourism sector, which I think will also be challenged probably for a long period, and which has been challenged for a long period. And I assume that this situation also calls for the need of the trade unions to do something and to take action to help their members and to help all the people who is losing their jobs. You're talking about CBAs and quality CBAs, but I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on which role does this leave for the trade unions, and how are they acting on it? And what are you doing as an organization also to support and help the unions to be able to support their members in the situation they are in right now?
Thank you, Annette. It's an interesting question. As I mentioned earlier, or maybe not clearly clarified, is that it has been, even at the FIC level, to interact with our partners. We got to start from that. It has, yes, a lot of offices have actually closed, and so that already is a big challenge. Now, what we've been working on is, again, virtual communication and finding out what they have been actually capable to do, and offering virtual support. For instance, I'm currently talking with the construction sector trade union in Tanzania, and of course the agriculture and plantation in Tanzania. And what they've actually tried to do right now is they keep on updating us. I remember they had the first meeting under TUCTA, which is the central organization in Tanzania. They had a meeting at the government level, and before they went to the meeting, we had an interaction, and some of the issues that we try to ask them to follow up on is that the workers that are actually being forced to go home indefinitely, is there any sort of benefit that they're actually given to cushion them during this particular period? Now, it was not very easy. As you might be aware, construction sector is full of casual workers. So that to us was a really, really big challenge because, again, these are workers that depend on a day-to-day income. Now, we've managed to have a good engagement with the plantation workers in Tanzania, and whom have actually gotten into good conversation. And some of the workers who've actually been dismissed have been given some special package to go home with. Some of them have had about 15% of what they actually had as original pay and all that. But that is the best that can actually be done. The other thing is to be able to have a proper dialogue on the priorities when the business resumed. The priorities to be given to the workers that were there before originally. As perhaps you're aware, sometimes companies, when they start afresh, they would rather be looking for new individuals to get into to provide jobs for. But what we try to suggest to be able to ensure and negotiate for the workers that have actually been dismissed to be given the priority to come back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that maybe, Annette, I have a question, and then we should leave the floor open for participants. Is that all right? It's a bit of follow-up also. As you mentioned, there's a lot of casual workers, and it's of course a disaster for them. What I would like to ask you is, there any sort of support on part of the government to individual or to companies? Here in Denmark, we have seen that both groups have been compensated related to that. And then other small question then is, we know that Maersk is a major operator in Kenya, I think in the Eastern Africa. I saw it myself in Mombasa. Do they give some sort of benefit? Because, maybe they would be interested in some sort of corporate social responsibility. Yes. And when Casper is now responding, you're welcome to raise your hand or to write in the chat, and then we'll take the questions as they come in. Yes, Casper.
Thanks, Johannes. A couple of weeks ago, particularly in Kenya, the government or the president came up with some incentives to cushion the workers. This included about 100% tax relief to low-income earners, those that are earning below 24,000. There is also some tax relief of between 30 and 25%, what we call pay as you earn, to workers that are earning above 24,000 shillings. And then there is also a decrease in the value added tax, or VAT, from 16 to 14 on what we call commodities. And then we have what we call the decrease in the resident corporate income tax from 30 to 25. It's in one way you can look at that as some good initiative. Uganda has also followed suit, but is much more looking at the late payment of social security and all that. So each country is actually trying to come up with different ways. The only challenge is that when you are talking about workers that are earning over 20,000 and you give them a tax relief of between 1335, you are talking about a very small part of the working population, because the majority will have actually lost their jobs anyway. So that doesn't make things any easier. When you're again talking about those that are, you're giving them 100% tax relief from, I mean, what they call pay as you earn. The lower part of the population that are working in the labor-intensive sectors that are much more affected in terms of employment. So you're giving relief to the workers that are not there. That, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that we're actually experiencing. We know very well, for if you talk about the value or the VAT having been reduced from 16 to 14, the other challenge is that we have actually been also having what we call controlled transport. Basically, the commodity prices are also going up. To which extent will this tax relief of coming from what we call 16 to 14 will be of any good to the poor person who's actually lost a job, and knowing that the transport of any food commodity or anything will have actually increased in terms of the prices, knowing that they are actually limited number of cars being transported per region is actually, to some extent, movement from one particular region is become a problem. So up until now, the government has tried what it can, but it is not exciting enough. It's actually not going to excite the economy to make life any better for the population. When you talk about companies like Musk, we've actually not been able to get back to them to know what they're actually doing. I know companies that have actually tried to come up with a form of having workers work in certain shifts without completely dismissing workers. To be honest, at this point, I'm not so sure what Musk has actually done. I know they've actually been difficult before. If you're aware, we've tried to come in with different ways to get them to respond to workers' rights, and it has not really necessarily brought in some proper fruit to it.
Thank you very much. And then Rustus has a comment to all, and then Maria has a question. So I will just unmute you.
Yes, I wanted to add on something that the government is doing in terms of trying to cushion the effect of the COVID-19. Casper's mentioned the issue of the incentives, the reduction of taxation from 16 to 14%. But they've also formed up a committee which is called the Economic Recovery Team, and it's led by some captains of industry. They've been receiving money. I know different companies from the private sector have been sending in money. I don't know the full count right now, but it's been quite substantial, and they're pulling their resources together. We have not seen what they have budgeted, what that amount that will be pulled through will go into. But one of the things that could be a bit significant is the reduction of the price of oil or fuel, because that affects everything, most sectors of the economy. And right now we are at the all-time low in terms of the price for gas, for fuel, in the country. Of course, it's a bit difficult for people who have lost their jobs, but it will be a bit of a relief for the ones who have something, because a lot of people have maybe had their pay slashed or their sources of income significantly reduced. So if the reduction in the price of fuel translates into reduction in prices of essential commodity, that could be something that will be a bit of a relief. But like Casper said, I think the efforts are not enough. If we look at the impact in terms of the impact on people, we've been seeing stories on TV where people have not been able to pay basics like rent. We've seen even a story that is quite extreme, where a woman was cooking stones to give the children an impression that there is food. So she just boiled stones, and we see really extreme cases and situations And then the situation is also bad because we also had floods and people have lost their lives. So the government is not doing enough. They're trying a few things. They've told maybe the financial institutions to relax for the people who probably have loans in the banks, to relax what is required for repayment, but it doesn't look very good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Yes, now Maria have a question or a comment, and then as we are reaching the time limit, I think we should try to do it short. I think there will be room for 2 or 3 questions or comments more. So I'll give the word to Maria, and you can then raise your hand when you want to ask a question. Yes, Alain has a question. He comes in afterwards. Maria?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for an interesting presentation, Casper, and Festus also with supplementing comments. I would like to know how the informal sector is reacting to all this. What is the situation there? Because the number of unemployed people that you mention will, I guess, some way or another also enter into the informal sector. So how are things going there? Could you please answer that?
Festus, would you like to say something first?
Yes. Yeah, I want to say for especially for the older generation, the government has come up as package to give about 10 to 15,000. That's about $150 which is it's not really much, but it's something. And they've also been organizing donations for a lot of people who've been affected. And the government has also said for the informal sector, especially for people who are making a couple of things, they'll give them the what is this called, the contracts. Like if somebody is, so that they can supply government with a few of the things that the informal sector can be able to make. Because a lot of the informal sector was also exporting things. There's also been a problem to export, even to do cross-border, like with our neighbors in Tanzania and Uganda. It's been quite difficult. There's been problems also with that, even food exports and stuff. So what the government is doing is trying to organize people, but a lot of it is based on benevolence or interest. So people just say, and they've also organized initiatives like you can be able to adopt a family. You contribute a certain amount, and that goes to essential goods or food. So that has been happening. I've seen also politicians have been doing donations, but in terms of really lifting businesses or saving businesses that are dying, it's not. Maybe the government does not have the full ideas right now. People are putting heads together, and we haven't seen a lot of tangible initiatives yet. But it's something that the government is talking about. I think I shared with Casper some circular today or report about the government inviting input into the private sector initiatives on different industries and participation to see how we can find solutions.
Thank you very much. I think we will, together with you, Casper, and also Festus, we will afterwards seek out the most important material that we can send to you afterwards, together with the video. So now, Alain.
Yes. Thank you, Casper, for your presentation. And the picture that you have shown us is very scary. And of course, this huge crisis that we are living now, and it has a very negative impact, as you have made your presentation. But as we know, crisis can be also as a kind of a window of opportunities. My question is, do you think that the COVID-19 can have some kind of window of opportunities for some positive change?
Yes, I always say, I hope I'll be as brief as possible, that one of the things that I think is going to, this pandemic is going to help us as Africans and Eastern Africans learn, and I hope we can actually learn, is that we need to depend less and less on the development partners in terms of support, in terms of creating better working conditions, but also in general health. This is again the first time that we know that moving a little bit away from the economy, but so much related, is we know this is the first time that our politicians are not able to actually run to Europe for treatment. So it's sort of giving us a good chance to be able to look at and say, can we strengthen our health care system? Can we strengthen our economy better? Can we look at the areas of the economy that are much more resilient to such situations? So I believe this is quite a good opportunity for us to learn. By the way, to just tell you is, I don't believe that COVID has been one of the, it's just one of the many situations we actually experience. Right now we have the, what we call the invasion from the locusts, floods, and all this. So there is a lot more to it. And I think, as I mentioned, the more we can actually strengthen and make our economy more resilient, the better. And I see that the amount of initiatives that are being taken, even by the health ministry, is something that we have never seen before. So it's a good point, and I hope that we can consistently go on up to build up a much greater, stronger, more autonomous economies of East Africa.
Thank you very much, Casper. And now, the last one, Carsten has a small comment if his system works. Are you with us, Carsten? Now I'm just going to see, I have to unmute you, I think. No, you should be on with the microphone.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Very faintly.
My system has some problems. So I have to be sure that you can hear me.
It's very difficult to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult if you can't hear me, of course.
That's better.
Now we can hear you if you're closer to the microphone, yes?
Okay. Thanks, Casper. Very good. What I would like to say, it's in fact a bit different. I see, as Casper just mentioned, the political situation might give some benefits. Unfortunately, this is not the case in Tanzania.
Carsten, it's still very difficult. I can hear that you're talking about that it can give some benefits. If we can hear you, you can continue, but let's test it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now?
Yeah. There are some benefits, but there are also serious problems. I see, especially in Tanzania. The way the president Magufuli is working is so terrible. He talks about the best way to treat this is prayer or drinking some lemon juice. Any figures coming out to the public, how many is infected and so on.
You're falling out again, Carsten.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think maybe we should let Casper comment on you, because I think we understood the context with the political situation in Tanzania and the horrible things that are recommended by the president. So Casper, if you would comment on that.
Well, I don't think I have any specific comment on that. I mean, we are all, monitoring what's going on in Tanzania. We cannot say for a fact what it's going to lead to. We only hear of that the number of positively, in fact, what to call it, tested people is high, but because of course of the control, we cannot tell for sure where the truth is. It's actually very difficult to comment on this at this point.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have reached our time limit. It would have been nice to have much more time to questions and comments, but I think it's good to be within the limit. What I would do now is to give the word to Casper for some concluding remarks. And afterwards, I have some practical things about the next webinar. So, Casper, your concluding remarks regarding this seminar, webinar?
Well, thank you very much. I think it has been a great opportunity. I know it's a bit always difficult to sort of put proper information, especially if there's so much to say and then you're running around with time. So it has not, it could have actually been better to, perhaps with more time, especially at the interaction level. But I think it's a great point for learning, and I believe that we have gathered quite some amount of ideas, and perhaps from here then maybe have some network. It's good to have Annette and Maria and everybody else and all that, and we hope from here then we can even look in the future of working together, because the situation is actually quite it's made the working conditions, the labor market, be much worse and much more difficult and challenging. So, but thank you everybody for your question and all your contribution. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much to you, Casper, and we hope that you might have a possibility to participate on some of the other webinars. It has been really interesting to hear your presentation, and I think it's given us a very, very good insight to the difficult situation, but also the way people are struggling within the youth movement and the trade unions to cope with this situation. And of course, this heartbreaking history about the women boiling stones for children, I think that will be an impression that we will take with us in the rest of these webinars. So thank you very much. And I will just come a few minutes with some concluding remarks about the practicalities regarding the next webinar. Those of you who have the possibility to stay for 10-15 minutes afterwards are very welcome to give us some feedback, response on how it has functioned, both with the technical part and with the content of. But I would like to say to you that we have different webinars here, and we are here on our websites where you can register. And the next one, it is a more cultural webinar about music, dance, poetry as cultural intermediaries. And then it is on Tuesday next week. And then on Thursday next week, we have human rights and democracy in Africa and globally in the shadow of the coronavirus will made a risk for civil society organizations and civil leaders. And maybe, I think for you, Carsten, but maybe for all of us, that would be interesting to hear, because it will actually set an focus on the negative impact on democracy that is reinforcing already existing tendencies to authoritarian regimes in Africa and elsewhere. You can find all the information on our website and also on Global News, Globalt Nyt, as I mentioned in the beginning. So now feel free to leave the room. Those of you who have the possibility are very welcome to give us some feedback. It has been very valuable to us the last time, and will certainly also be very valuable to us this time. So actually what I will do now, it is I will unmute all microphones, because then you have, I think you just raise your hand and I can give you the possibility of coming with some comments or questions. Yes. So, yes, we have it a bit difficult. I have asked to unmute. I don't know if you, I think you should yourself take the request when I request you to unmute. Yes, somebody who wants to start? Questions and comments? Feedback? I think if I should say myself, we have some small technical issues. And it was, we choose this time that Casper was fully concentrated on the presentation, which is very good. And I took part of the PowerPoints. But there was some problems there, finding the right way, so that we have to experience more with in the wilderness before the next webinar. And I don't know how you think the framework of the presentation were. Last time we got a reaction that maybe it would be good to split a presentation up in 3 parts and then give the possibilities for clarifying questions for a few minutes and then go on. I don't know what do you think about that?
Perhaps this could be better for next presentations.
Yeah.
If like part of the presentation and then questions and then the other part of the presentation. But for this time it was also okay because it was linked. We wanted to know more, and Casper was doing it in a linked way. We wanted to get an overview of the situation, and this helped because it's interlinked in the end, and we could not just stop in the middle and say this is about the workers and this is what happens next. That's why it's this time it was also good for me.
Yeah, very fine. Thank you very much. Yes. What do you think, Annette?
I also think it worked well. I think it's. I mean, it's. I think it's good to have the whole presentation and then questions afterwards. So yeah, for me, I think it was fine and interesting.
Yeah.
The time is short, but it's always, I think, a balance. I mean, and especially when having webinars like this, that they should not be too long, but also, I mean, yeah, it will also be good to know more. So
exactly.
I think this is a big subject and could talk about it for a long time. But yeah, I think it went well. It was nice.
Yeah, very fine, very fine. Yes. And I think you were loud and clear, Casper. There was some few parts, but it was, you could always get the meaning. It was just a few seconds that went out, so it was no problem. And I think that will always be part of using these platforms. That is, it's quite clear, Carsten. I don't know if he is in Tanzania right now, but it was a problem with the connection there. So, so yes.
Excuse me, I have to leave right now.
Yeah.
But thank you, Hans, for arranging this, and thank you, Casper, for this rich presentation. It was really a pleasure to experience what's going on in East Africa, and from my side, I'm comparing this with what's happening here in the Middle East, because I'm working for the Danish agency for cooperation and development in Tunisia and the Middle East, and this is really enlightening because we have shared areas, and we have also, I'd say, many similar challenges with the work with the trade unions, especially in this time of COVID-19. I hope this will turn for the better, and I hope the trade unions will be much more powerful in the future, not to experience the same, and to be more prepared with the help of the international partners and also with their internal preparations.
Exactly. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how did you see the invitation? Where did you see it?
Yeah, it was actually a friend of mine working at Ibis Oxfam.
Oh yeah.
Who received the invitation from you, Jans, and then he forwarded it to me, and then I spread the news in the Danish Trade Union Development Agency.
But thank you very much. Yes, because we send out in the network here to 280 Danish organizations working with international development, and it is so nice to hear that it also spreads out in their network. So thank you very much for joining us. Yes.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And Erastus, do you have some comments? Oh, sorry, your microphone is mute. Yes, now you're on. Yes.
I think it was good to have that session and reflect on a few things that Casper was sharing. I like the structure. So I think, like you said, fixing the very small, insignificant technical elements, then it will.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And Bettina, you have some comments?
No, I think it was very interesting and nice to hear. And of course, we still have to work a bit on the technology and perhaps our broadband strength in here at home is too small. So we might sit in the real office of the wilderness for the next time.
Yes, for the next one. Yes, that's it. Yes, so thank you very much, Casper. I will be coming back to you tomorrow so that we can get your PowerPoints and eventually also some relevant materials. And the video. What do you say? Hvad sagde du, Bettina?
No, if Annette has something.
Still here.
Yes.
Yeah.
do you have some remarks also?
I don't think I have any more remarks. I think it was nice, very interesting, and nice to hear about your work, and see all of you again. And I agree very much with Mohammed that there's a big work for the trade unions to do, and I think even bigger, and hopefully also that it will be more obvious in the society that there is a need for having better conditions of work and stronger CBAs, and for the trade union to raise their voice. So there's so much to do and so many challenges.
Exactly.
But hope you keep up the good work.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you very much. I don't know. There's a reaction. Maybe you could clap here. Yes. So thank you very much, Casper. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
So over and out.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks. Thank you so much. Bye.